In the quiet gallery of the Yale University Art Museum, I was immersed in preparing a new exhibition. The soft early summer sunlight streamed through the high windows, gently reflecting off the frames of 17th-century Flemish paintings. As a curator, these moments of intimate connection with artwork were my greatest joy. "Olivia, do you have a moment?" The voice of my sister-in-law Ashley coming through my smartphone made me pause my work. Her wedding was in 2 weeks, and she'd been calling frequently to discuss the preparations. "Of course, Ashley. What's the matter?" "Well, it's about the venue." Ashley's voice lacked its usual cheerfulness. I'd heard that my mother-in-law had taken the lead in selecting the venue. What they didn't know was that my family owned Morgan Celebrations, a luxury wedding venue chain in Connecticut. I hadn't revealed this to my husband's family, not wanting to be judged by my background. I thought back to how I met Daniel, a pediatrician at Yale New Haven Hospital. We first crossed paths during a children's art therapy program at the museum. I was immediately drawn to his genuine character and interest in my project. I wanted to preserve our relationship where he saw me for who I was, not for my family background or social status. That's why I deliberately chose not to mention my family business. 1 year into our marriage, I remembered our own wedding day. Even then, my mother-in-law Catherine maintained an elegant smile of the upper class, while her eyes remained cold toward me. As a former model and regular in high society, perhaps she found me, a museum curator, insufficient as a partner for her son. "They've decided on Morgan Celebrations," Ashley said. I caught my breath. My family's venue. And they had chosen the most prestigious Greenwich location. Mother insists it has to be there. But the budget. I closed my eyes quietly. I already knew from my parents. When my mother-in-law visited for a tour, my father, recognizing her as my in-laws, had offered their $150,000 package for an exceptional price of $50,000. "Because they're our daughter's new family," he'd said. However, rather than being surprised by this offer, my mother-in-law had accepted it as treatment befitting their social status. My parents hadn't said anything, likely considering my position. "Don't worry, Ashley. It will be a beautiful wedding." After hanging up, I gazed out the window, lost in complicated thoughts. My husband Daniel tried to avoid getting caught between his mother and wife by steering clear of family topics. Though he maintained a firm demeanor as a pediatrician handling emergency cases at the hospital, he became almost too cautious when it came to family matters. That evening, my exhausted husband leaned against me when he got home. "I heard from Mom about the venue." His voice was tinged with worry. I gently squeezed his hand in return. "It's all right. It's Ashley's special day." However, the venue staff knew I was the owner's daughter. What would happen when my mother-in-law found out on the day? An unsettling feeling crossed my mind. I sighed deeply as I imagined the refined Greenwich venue bathed in early summer sunlight. By the time I returned to the museum, dusk was approaching. The exhibition preparation was barely half finished. I turned my attention back to the Flemish paintings, trying to regain my focus. Art has a mysterious power, it calms the mind and helps one see things objectively. 2 weeks until the wedding day. Unlike this quiet gallery, I could sense approaching turbulence. Still, I chose to believe everything would work out, holding on to my trust in my husband and love for family. The morning of the wedding day was bathed in fresh early summer light. The magnificent building of Morgan Celebrations, standing in Greenwich's upscale residential area, was quietly illuminated by the morning sun. Its imposing exterior, reminiscent of a European castle, was particularly eye-catching even in this prestigious neighborhood. Dressed in a navy Carolina Herrera dress, I was driving to the venue separately from my husband Daniel, who had been called early for wedding preparations. While driving, I checked my expression in the rearview mirror. Makeup perfect, hair in place. Though I had visited my family's venue countless times before, this morning felt oddly tense. As I approached the entrance, I could see staff members bustling about since early morning. An arch of pure white roses and lilacs elegantly adorned the main entrance. Below it, security guards in black suits gracefully welcomed guests. Everything exuded a perfectly calculated, refined atmosphere. I parked my car in the designated spot and took a deep breath. Getting through today with a smile, that would be the best gift for Ashley. I reassured myself of this as I released my grip on the steering wheel. "Good morning." The security guard politely opened the door. Though staff who knew this was my family's venue would normally show special respect, my father had surely instructed them to treat me as a regular guest today. "I'm Olivia Brown," I announced myself in a composed voice. The security guard checked his tablet, then checked again, his expression turning confused. At his look, my heart began to beat slightly faster. "I'm terribly sorry, but your name isn't." At those words, my time seemed to freeze for a moment. There must be some mistake. "I'm the bride's sister-in-law." I struggled to keep my voice from trembling. Around us, guests were beginning to arrive, members of high society dressed in designer brands like Oscar de la Renta and Calvin Klein, casting curious glances our way. The guard checked his tablet again and shook his head apologetically. "I'm very sorry, but you're definitely not on the list." In that moment, I understood everything. This was no accidental oversight. I quietly took my smartphone from my handbag and dialed my mother-in-law's number. After 3 rings, her distinctive voice answered. "Oh, Olivia. Why are you calling so early?" Her tone carried obvious pleasure. Conscious of the eyes around me, I responded as calmly as possible. "Catherine, it seems my name isn't on the list." "Ah, yes. You actually came. The family section is for real family only." Those words reached my ears along with an elegant laugh. Something froze inside my head. "But I'm Daniel's wife." "Yes, on paper. But you're still not suitable." I silently closed my phone. It was only then that I noticed my hands were trembling slightly. I took a deep breath. The confused security guard still stood before me. Around us, I could hear guests who had witnessed the scene whispering among themselves. "Isn't she the bride's sister-in-law? To think she'd be denied entry. I wonder if there was some trouble. At that moment, through the entrance hall, I caught a glimpse of Ashley in her pure white Vera Wang wedding dress heading to the makeup room. She hadn't noticed me. If she learned about this situation now, it would surely ruin her special day. I gripped my smartphone again. This time, I dialed my family's number. Father. My voice trembled slightly. But hearing his next words filled me with relief. I'm on my way. I'll bring the lawyer. My father's voice carried stern determination beneath its usual gentleness. I closed my eyes softly. Father, please don't rush. The ceremony isn't for another hour. I understand. But I can't let you wait any longer. After hanging up, I sat down on a bench beside the entrance. The navy blue of my Carolina Herrera dress elegantly reflected the morning light. Before me, guests continued to arrive, being absorbed into the venue as if nothing was amiss. I was organizing my thoughts. This made me contemplate the nature of family and my own position. Had I made the right decision in not revealing my family's business? How would this incident affect my relationship with my husband? I understood what my father meant by bringing the lawyer. This wasn't just about retribution. This was the moment when long-hidden truths would come to light. About an hour had passed. During this time, I had received 3 calls from my husband, but I hadn't answered any of them. I wanted to wait until my parents arrived before explaining things to him. From afar, a stately black Rolls-Royce Phantom appeared. It was the car my family used only for special occasions. The vehicle gleamed in the morning sun as it approached the venue with dignity. I could see our longtime chauffeur, James, at the wheel. As the car glided to a stop at the front entrance, first to emerge from the passenger seat was Michael Steinberg, the lawyer, dressed in a gray suit. A friend of my father's for 30 years and the Morgan family's legal counsel. From the back seat, my father William and mother Margaret appeared with grace. My father wore a navy Brooks Brothers suit, his expression carrying even more dignity than usual. My mother was dressed in a Chanel suit, her bearing as refined as a member of the British royal family. Sorry to keep you waiting, Olivia. My mother's voice carried its usual gentleness along with strong determination. The staff couldn't hide their agitation at the sudden appearance of the owner couple. The security guard hurriedly bowed deeply. Mr. Morgan, could it be? My father nodded gently to the security guard, then walked toward me. Daughter, I'm sorry you had to endure this. At those words, tears welled up in my eyes. But I quickly wiped them away with the handkerchief my mother offered. William, let's speak with the mother-in-law first. At my mother's suggestion, my father nodded quietly. Lawyer Steinberg adjusted his grip on the thick stack of documents. At this moment, a commotion arose in the entrance hall. Looking up, we saw my mother-in-law Catherine standing on the second-floor balcony, dressed in an Oscar de la Renta suit. What business do you have here? We're in the middle of a wedding. My mother-in-law's voice still carried confidence. However, her expression froze at my father's next words. Actually, we are the owners of this venue. and a serious matter has arisen regarding the current contract." The atmosphere changed instantly. I could see my mother-in-law's hand trembling slightly as she gripped the balcony railing. "You mean, you are—" Mrs. Catherine, lawyer Steinberg stepped forward. "The regular price for today's wedding package is $150,000. If the conditions for the current special discount become invalid, you will need to pay the difference of $100,000 immediately." The color drained from my mother-in-law's face. Behind her on the balcony, my father-in-law Richard worriedly placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. In the second-floor hallway, I could see my sister-in-law Ashley in her wedding dress, unable to grasp the situation. What's going on?" Ashley's voice trembled. At that moment, we heard footsteps running up the stairs. Turning around, there stood my husband Daniel. His expression showed anger I had never seen before. "Mother, why would you do this?" Daniel's voice echoed through the silent space. Catherine couldn't meet her son's eyes. Our social status." "Enough," Daniel's words cut off his mother's explanation. "As of today, I'm cutting ties with my family." "Daniel, you can't be serious." My mother-in-law's voice cracked. "I am serious. I cannot forgive how you've treated Olivia." At that moment, my mother-in-law's knees weakened slightly, and my father-in-law rushed to support her. Ashley covered her face with both hands. With only 30 minutes until the wedding, the ceremony's start was now in jeopardy. My father quietly began climbing the stairs. His presence was like that of a king of high society. My mother and lawyer Steinberg followed. I remained on the first floor, looking up at the scene. "Father," I whispered softly, "please, handle this gently." However, events had already progressed beyond the point of no return. The light from the heavy chandelier silently watched over this dramatic scene. Staff and guests gathered in the entrance hall held their breath as they watched. From the upstairs waiting room came the sound of soft crying. "Ashley!" I felt my chest tighten, knowing how important this day was for her. And now, the discussion between my father and mother-in-law was about to begin. It was clear this development would significantly change all our lives. I sighed deeply and slowly began climbing the stairs. The heavy door of the waiting room quietly closed, and the room was filled with tense atmosphere. All related parties had gathered in the spacious room furnished with luxury pieces. My mother-in-law Catherine sat at the edge of the sofa, nervously adjusting the cuff of her Oscar de la Renta suit. Beside her, my father-in-law Richard gently held his wife's trembling hands. "Mrs. Catherine," my father's voice resonated quietly but with firm resolve. "What are your thoughts on this situation?" My mother-in-law lowered her eyes for a moment, then raised her face as if having made up her mind. "I was wrong." Her voice had lost its usual arrogance. Ashley continued sobbing in her pure white wedding dress. Her groom James stood with his hand on her shoulder, comforting her. His expression showed a mix of confusion and sadness. "Brother, please." Ashley's trembling voice was directed at Daniel. "Don't cut ties with Mother." I silently watched the situation unfold. I had an intuition that something was about to change dramatically in this place, at this moment. My mother stepped forward gracefully and began speaking in a gentle voice. "Ashley, I'm so sorry we've turned your special day into something like this." At those words, the atmosphere in the room softened slightly. It was my mother's mysterious power. In any tense situation, she could soothe people's hearts with her elegant demeanor and thoughtful words. However, this isn't just about a wedding, Lawyer Steinberg continued, looking at his documents. This is a serious contract violation that affects Morgan Celebration's reputation. At that moment, I made my decision. I stepped forward. "Please forgive her, just for today." Everyone in the room turned to look at me. "This is Ashley's special day. She's innocent in all of this." My father frowned. "But Olivia, the way she treated you." "I understand," I continued quietly. "But we're family. Perhaps this is an opportunity to build new bonds, right here, today." Daniel walked to my side and gently took my hand. "Olivia." His voice mixed with love and pride. My mother-in-law suddenly stood up and walked in front of me. In her eyes, I saw sincere emotion for the first time. "Olivia, Words caught in my mother-in-law's throat as a tear rolled down her cheek. "I've realized my foolishness. You truly are the right person for my son." At that confession, the room's atmosphere transformed. Ashley's crying stopped, and her groom James let out a relieved sigh. After a deep sigh, my father made his decision. "Very well," he nodded to Lawyer Steinberg. "Let's set special payment terms. Could we arrange to pay the remaining $100,000 in 60 monthly installments?" my father-in-law Richard quietly proposed. "We'll pay without fail each month." My father thought for a moment, then slowly nodded. "Agreed. Let's redraft the contract." My mother-in-law bowed deeply. "Thank you. And I'm truly sorry." Ashley ran over and hugged me tightly. "Olivia, thank you," her voice trembled with tears and joy. However, Daniel's expression remained stern. "Mother, even after today's ceremony, our relationship won't easily return to normal." "I understand," my mother-in-law answered quietly. "Please let me slowly work to regain your trust." Outside the window, we could see guests continuously arriving at the venue. The faint scent of white roses wafted through the room. "Well then," my mother said brightly. "Let's make this a wonderful wedding. I'll put my skills as Margaret Morgan's event director to full use." At those words, Ashley's face lit up. "You mean Mrs. Morgan herself?" My mother smiled gracefully. "Yes, as a special occasion." Staff members began moving hurriedly, receiving new instructions from my mother. I squeezed Daniel's hand tightly. He nodded silently in return. After overcoming this crisis, our family bonds were entering a new phase. However, not everything was resolved yet. The path to reconciliation ahead would not be smooth. Still, at this moment, in this place, we had taken a new step forward. My mother-in-law stood before the mirror to fix her makeup. Her expression no longer showed the arrogance of before. In her eyes, regret and hope intermingled. My father put the final signature on the documents and capped his fountain pen. The sound seemed to announce the beginning of a new chapter. "Well then, let's make this a magnificent wedding," my mother's voice warmly enveloped the entire room. Through the window, Greenwich's clear sky was visible. The early summer light gently illuminated our family's new bonds. I took a deep breath. This was just the real beginning. 1 year has passed since then. The Brown family mansion in Greenwich's upscale residential area had lost its intimidating atmosphere and was now wrapped in warm light. Newly planted roses bloomed in the garden, their fragrance carried by the early summer breeze. Daniel and I had settled into a new home in a quiet New Haven neighborhood shortly after Ashley's wedding. It was a 15-minute drive to the Yale University Art Museum and close to my husband's hospital. Our new life had brought us peace of mind. My mother-in-law had changed dramatically since that day. She gradually distanced herself from glamorous social gatherings and instead began volunteering with local children's support organizations. The change was so natural it surprised everyone. "When I'm with the children, it reminds me of when Daniel was little," she confided during a rare one-on-one lunch recently. Her eyes showed no trace of their former haughtiness. The monthly payments continued without a single delay. It was more than just a financial commitment. It was a demonstration of their will to make amends and build a new relationship. Ashley and her groom James started their new life in San Francisco. She occasionally sends photos from a small sushi restaurant run by a Japanese chef she met there. "The table manners Mother taught me are coming in handy here," she messages, bringing genuine joy to my mother-in-law's face. Perhaps the biggest change was my mother-in-law's commitment to charitable work. She leveraged her connections to establish a scholarship program for underprivileged children. When my father learned of this activity, he offered support through Morgan celebrations. "People really can change," my mother told me softly one day. "Because you showed compassion that day." Indeed, the events of that wedding brought a major turning point to our family. However, it wasn't an ending, but a new beginning. This spring, I received a letter from my mother-in-law. Written in elegant handwriting, the words conveyed deep reflection and hope. "Olivia, whenever I think of that day, my heart aches at my foolishness. However, thanks to your compassion, I was able to realize what's most important in life. My son's happiness lies not in social status or appearances, but in sincere relationships with loved ones." At the end of the letter was an unexpected proposal. She wanted to host a family dinner gathering at the Greenwich Mansion during Christmas weekend. "This time, please let me be the one to welcome everyone with all my heart." Those words brought warmth welling up inside me. Last weekend, we accepted my mother-in-law's proposal and all gathered for dinner for the first time in a while. The table was set with her favorite Limoges china, and the chef had prepared elegantly plated dishes. However, what was most impressive was my mother-in-law's natural smile. There was no longer any trace of concern about keeping up appearances or social standing. She was simply enjoying time spent with family. She seemed like a completely different person. Actually, she began as dessert was being served. After a slight hesitation, she continued. I was wondering if I could plan a charity event for children at Morgan's celebrations. My father immediately agreed, and my mother happily offered her cooperation. Ashley, participating via video call, had joy sparkling in her eyes. That's a wonderful idea, I responded sincerely. The scent of roses from the garden wafted into the dining room at dusk. Daniel gently squeezed my hand and nodded. It was a moment when the new bonds we had built over the past year took tangible form. Later, while preparing a new exhibition at the Yale University Art Museum, I suddenly realized something. Our lives are like the paintings in this museum. Sometimes they may be covered in dark tones, but when light hits them differently, they show completely different expressions. My mother-in-law is now beginning to shine a new light on her life. And we too are continuing to paint our masterpiece called Family together. Outside the window, early summer sunlight poured down on the museum garden, as if blessing our new story.